Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we try to cut through all the noise, all the static of the daily news cycle to really give you the context and the insight you need.
It's the only way to do it. And right now is, well, it's a profound time to be trying to make sense of things.
Oh, so.
Well, you have these incredible moments of human achievement happening at just light speed. We're looking back to the beginning of time with the James Webb Space Telescope, and at the same time, we're watching the first company hit a $5 trillion valuation.
Right. And all that incredible acceleration is just colliding head-on with these ancient, persistent human conflicts and, these really deep ethical problems.
That's the theme today, really. Risk and resilience.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about things like light from a supernova that exploded when the universe was just an infant, 730 million years after the Big Bang.
And then we're going to pivot right back to Earth and look at the immediate, almost creepy risk of things like biased AI models that are, let's be honest, starting to run our lives.
So our deep dive today is structured to handle that collision. We're starting out there in the cosmos, looking at space, and then coming back down to our own planet's geology and climate.
Then we're jumping straight into technology, the digital double-edged sword, all the promises of productivity, but all the ethical nightmares that come with it.
From there, it's the geopolitical chessboard. We'll spend a lot of time on the shifting dynamics between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia, the constant tension over the Taiwan Strait, and the just devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
And then we'll wrap up with market dynamics, corporate battles, and some really crucial stories about human safety, health, and of course, a little bit of sports drama.
Okay, it's a huge stack of material. Let's get into it for you.
Let's do it.
So let's start as far away as we possibly can, right at the edge of human observation. We've got this, truly monumental achievement from the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST.
It's incredible. They've detected the most distant supernova ever recorded. It's got one of those catchy names, GRB 250312A.
And what's so stunning here isn't just that it's far away in space, it's that it's far away in time.
That's the key. You have to get your head around that. We are looking at an event that happened just 730 million years after the Big Bang.
So to put that in perspective for you,
the universe was an infant. It was just getting started. The light from that star exploding has been traveling across almost the entire history of space-time to finally reach the JWST's mirrors.
I know this is more than just breaking a record for distance. This actually changes our fundamental understanding of what the early universe was like. So what's the pivotal piece here for the astrophysicists?
It's all about the context and, the composition. This event, the supernova, was kicked off by a gamma ray burst that was first picked up by another mission, the SVOM, which stands for the Space Variable Objects Monitor.
So the SVOM mission saw the flash, basically.
It saw the flash, and it sent out an alert to astronomers all over the world. That allowed the JWST to pivot, point its mirrors, and do these immediate follow-up observations in the infrared spectrum.
And what did it see?
Well, this is the really striking part. What the JWST saw, the supernova's characteristics, its brightness, the chemical makeup of the galaxy it was in, it all looks surprisingly similar to much more modern, more recent supernovae that are linked to gamma ray bursts.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound right. If the conditions in the early universe were so radically different, way fewer heavy elements, what they call metallicity, shouldn't the explosion look completely different?
That is the core paradox. That is the big question this discovery raises. Our current models, our cosmological theories, they mostly predict that those first-generation stars would be these massive metal-poured giants, and they probably die or burn out in really unique ways.
But this one didn't.
This one looked normal. The unexpected similarity suggests that maybe the processes of galaxy formation and the whole life cycle of these massive stars were maybe more efficient or happened faster than we previously thought.
So it's challenging our timeline for how the universe evolved.
It's forcing a rewrite. It makes us reconsider how quickly the first heavy elements, everything other than hydrogen and helium, were actually formed and then distributed throughout the cosmos. The JWST isn't just a telescope, It's a time machine that's also an editor, forcing us to revise the history books.
Truly staggering stuff. Okay, so let's pull our focus in from the cosmic and philosophical down to the very practical reality of actually getting human beings back into deep space. We have some major updates on the Artemis II mission preps.
Yes, and the success of the entire Artemis program, I mean, the whole plan to get back to the moon and beyond, it all rests on the people on the ground, the operational excellence of ground support.
And we've learned about the team leading that effort.
We have the work being done by Jen Madsen and Trey Perryman. They lead the Orion Mission Evaluation Room at NASA's. That's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
So for Artemis the 6 specifically, what is the weight on their shoulders? What are they responsible for?
Well, Artemis II is the big one. It's the first crewed mission that will actually orbit the moon since the Apollo days, decades ago. So Madsen and Perryman's team, they are the literal nerve center. They're watching every single sensor, every system on that spacecraft in real time to make sure the crew is safe.
And they're testing a lot of new gear for the first time with people on board.
For the very first time, and that is the crucial point. They are testing brand new technologies, most importantly, the Orion capsule's very complex life support systems, with a human crew inside.
So anything goes wrong.
If there is a pressure anomaly, a tiny temperature spike, a comms failure during that 10-day journey around the moon, their team's ability to just synthesize immense amounts of data instantly is the difference.
Literally life and death.
It is the difference between mission success and absolute catastrophe. They're drawing on expertise from international partners like the European Space Agency, the ESA, and private companies like Lockheed Martin and Airbus. It's the ultimate high-stakes, real-time engineering problem.
And of course, space is never just about science. It's always, always deeply political. And we're seeing a really significant strategic partnership deepening between Russia and Iran in space.
Yeah, this is a big deal on the world stage. This partnership was formally signed in early 2025. It covers a whole range of things: energy, science, tech, but it's the space element that's really getting the attention of Western intelligence agencies.
And the most tangible result of that so far.
Iran successfully launched 3 of its own domestically produced satellites, but they launched them from Russian territory, using Russian rockets. This is way more than just a diplomatic photo op. It's a significant boost to Tehran's technological power.
Okay, so let's break that down. What does launching 3 satellites actually do for Iran's defense profile for their military?
It enhances everything. It helps their telecommunications, for sure. But the critical part is reconnaissance and military surveillance. Suddenly, they have access to much higher quality, real-time satellite imagery and data.
Often facilitated by Russia.
Facilitated by or provided through Russian infrastructure, exactly. It boosts their defense capabilities, their ability to monitor regional hotspots, and it sends a very clear signal of a strengthening alliance between Moscow and Tehran, especially with all the ongoing global tensions. It's creating a kind of non-Western axis of technological power that the U.S. and its allies are, watching very, very closely.
All right, let's bring it all the way back home to our own planet, which has its own volatility to deal with, both internal and external. Let's start with the external space weather. If you are an aurora chaser, it sounds like 2026 is going to be your year.
Oh, absolutely. We are getting very close to the solar maximum. That's the peak of the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This one is called solar cycle 25.
So the sun gets hyperactive.
It gets very hyperactive. It produces way more sunspots, more solar flares, and that leads to more powerful coronal mass ejections, or CMEs.
And these CMEs, these are the clouds of charged particles that fly off the sun.
Exactly. And when those charged particles slam into Earth's magnetic shield, our magnetosphere, they interact with the gases in our atmosphere. And that interaction is what creates that incredible light show we call the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights.
And the different colors we see, that's all down to the chemistry of our atmosphere, right?
Precisely. It's what gas is getting hit at what altitude. The classic green color, the one you see most often, that's generated by excited oxygen atoms, usually at lower altitudes.
And the rarer ones, the pinks and purples.
That's nitrogen. When nitrogen atoms get excited, they glow in those rarer purple and pink shades, and that's usually happening much higher up in the atmosphere.
What was really wild in 2025 was seeing them so far south.
That was truly remarkable. We had reports of auroras from Hungary, from Switzerland, even from the southern United States. That's a huge tell. It suggests the solar storms were unusually powerful, driving that aurora much closer to the equator than is typical.
It sounds breathtaking, but you mentioned there's a pretty significant downside to all this increased solar activity.
Yeah, we have to balance the beauty of it with the potential risk. There's a growing concern among researchers about the link between these extremely energetic particles, the ones that cause the most intense auroras, and actual measurable ozone depletion.
So the light show is actually damaging our planetary shield.
It could be. The ozone layer is resilient, of course, but if we have sustained high-intensity solar activity, The resulting changes in atmospheric chemistry could potentially degrade that shield over time. So it raises these longer-term concerns about UV radiation and atmospheric stability. The beautiful cosmic spectacle might be coming at a subtle but very real cost.
Now let's talk about the Earth's physical stability, or maybe its lack of stability. We've got some critical updates on the Thwaites Glacier down in Antarctica.
Yes, a really vital scientific expedition is happening right now to study Thwaites. It often gets that dramatic nickname, the Doomsday Glacier.
And that name isn't just hyperbole, is it?
Not at all. This glacier is absolutely enormous, and it's retreating at an accelerating rate. The scientists on site are using advanced radar and other tools to gather data on the exact mechanics of what's driving this rapid melting.
So why is this one specific glacier so uniquely important to the entire planet's climate?
Because it's a cork in a bottle. The Thwaites Glacier acts as a plug, or a buttress, holding back much, much larger ice sheets behind it in West Antarctica.
So if Thwaites goes...
If Thwaites fully collapses, which scientists believe is plausible within the coming decades, it could destabilize all those massive interior ice sheets. And if that entire volume of ice were to be released into the ocean, you're looking at a global sea level rise in several feet.
Wow.
So this expedition is basically in a race against time to try and predict how soon that catastrophic collapse might actually happen. It's arguably one of the most critical climate science missions happening anywhere right now.
And from the poles to a place we generally think of as geologically stable.
Yeah.
The UK saw a lot of seismic activity.
A really surprising amount, yeah. In 2025, the UK experienced a high frequency of tremors. The British Geological Survey reported over 300 earthquakes.
Now, most were small.
Oh yeah, most were very low magnitude, unlikely to cause any serious damage. But it's the sheer number of them across regions like Perthshire and Scotland and down in southern Wales that's noteworthy. The UK is far from any major tectonic plate boundaries, so it just underscores the need for better monitoring. Even in quiet zones, subtle movements can still pose risks.
Okay, before we move on, we have to touch on a really concerning, localized environmental threat in the United States down in Alabama.
This is a story about the mobile tensor delta, and it revolves around the deeply controversial mismanagement of coal ash waste by the utility company, Alabama Power.
And this coal ash, it's nasty stuff.
It's full of heavy metals like arsenic and mercury, and it's being stored in these unlined ponds, basically giant pits right next to the mobile tensor delta. This is an area so ecologically rich, it's often called the American Amazon.
And there's this really extreme juxtaposition here, isn't there? You have this potential for an absolute disaster, but at the same time, people are proposing environmental solutions.
That's the conflict in a nutshell. On one hand, you have environmental activists sounding a huge alarm. They argue that because of poor regulatory oversight, a catastrophic breach of one of these ponds could happen, and it would create one of the most polluted sites in the U.S.
And on the other hand,
there are these concurrent proposals to recycle the coal ash and turn it into valuable construction materials. But here's the problem. Without immediate, rigorous regulatory oversight that forces a proper cleanup and management plan, the potential for disaster just vastly outweighs the theoretical benefit of recycling it later. It's a classic, urgent tension between industry, economics, and protecting a critical ecosystem.
Right. We move now from the raw elements of the cosmos and the Earth to the, I guess, the code and the infrastructure that's increasingly running our lives. Let's jump straight into the AI revolution. It's moving faster than anything we've talked about, and its ethical fault lines are getting wider.
The ethical tightrope walk is definitely getting slipperier. A really critical study just came out of the University of California, Berkeley, and it exposed what they called an alarming bias problem inside these core large language models, or LLMs, like ChatGPT.
And to be clear, this wasn't just the AI, not getting the latest slang. This was systemic prejudice. How did it manifest?
It went so far beyond a simple failure to understand. What the researchers found was that when the AI models were interacting with people who use non-standard or regional English dialects, they consistently got back responses laced with negative stereotypes.
So what does that look like in practice?
Condescending remarks, or the AI would just actively struggle to complete simple tasks. Essentially, the AI was just absorbing and then amplifying the societal prejudices that were embedded in the massive amounts of text it was trained on. It was treating some people as less intelligent or less sophisticated simply because of their accent or dialect.
That is genuinely terrifying, especially when you think about how integrated these tools are becoming in things like hiring and legal research, in customer service.
It institutionalizes discrimination at lightning speed. If the AI is biased, The whole system is biased.
You risk creating a kind of digital caste system.
You do. A system where your access to efficient AI help is implicitly restricted based on your linguistic identity. It just underscores that these LLMs, they aren't objective tools. They're just reflections of the flawed, biased data we feed them.
But the proposed solution is complicated.
Very. It involves moving away from this one-size-fits-all, monolithic, standard English model, and instead trying to develop customized LLMs that are specifically trained to understand, respect, and accurately process all these different dialect variations to ensure everyone gets equitable access to this powerful technology.
And the expansion of this tech is only increasing these risks. I mean, OpenAI just rolled out massive integrations with all sorts of third-party apps.
Yes, through what they call the Apps SDK. ChatGPT is now becoming hyper-integrated with major services you probably use every day. DoorDash, Spotify, Uber.
The sales pitch is all about productivity.
Of course. Manage your music, order your food, call a car, all through one single AI interface. But the reality, well, it just reignites these huge concerns over data privacy.
If my AI assistant is ordering my Uber, it knows my daily routine. If it's controlling my Spotify, it knows my mood. That data trail is just immense.
Exactly. All your sensitive user data is now flowing seamlessly between multiple, very powerful corporations, and all of it is running through the generative AI engine itself. This just exponentially increases the surface area for potential data breaches, but also for targeted misinformation, manipulation, and for the exploitation of those embedded biases we just talked about. The convenience is enormous, but the price you're paying in terms of personal data control is rising just as fast.
And yet, despite all these concerns, the money people, the venture capitalists, they see no brakes on this thing. They're forecasting a massive boom in enterprise AI adoption for 2026.
The consensus is absolutely firm. 2026 is the year AI goes from being an experiment to being essential in the corporate world. VCs are projecting a 4-fold increase in enterprise adoption of generative AI compared to traditional software.
So this is no longer optional for businesses.
It's being viewed as a necessary catalyst for transformation. It's about competitive advantage. If you don't adopt, you get left behind.
And which sectors are really leading this charge?
The forecast really points to 3 main areas: healthcare, finance, and retail. In healthcare, it's about using AI for diagnostics, for reading scans, for streamlining all the administrative paperwork. In finance, it's about enhanced fraud detection and creating personalized financial models.
In retail.
Optimizing supply chains and creating hyper-personalized customer engagement. This whole push is being fueled by these ever-increasing corporate budgets that are dedicated specifically to deep digital transformation.
Okay, let's pivot now to frankly, a deeply sinister application of this kind of technology. Government surveillance using commercial spyware. This feels like a fundamental threat to democratic values.
It is a truly frightening development. We're talking about incredibly powerful tools like Pegasus from the NSO Group and Graphite from a company called Paragon. These are commercial, off-the-shelf surveillance packages that are sold primarily to government clients.
And the targets often aren't criminals or terrorists.
No. The targets are very often journalists, human rights activists, political dissidents, people who are simply trying to hold power accountable.
The key mechanism here, the zero-click vulnerability, that's what makes it so terrifying. It's virtually impossible to defend against. Can you explain how that works?
A zero-click vulnerability means the spyware can be covertly installed on your device, your phone, your laptop, without you having to do anything. You don't click a link, you don't open an attachment, nothing.
You're completely passive and unaware.
Completely. And once it's installed, it has total access. It can turn on your camera and microphone. It can read your encrypted messages. It can see your contacts, track your location. It essentially turns your private phone into a state-controlled spying device.
So what are the big tech companies doing in response to this? Are they doing anything?
They are finally starting to fight back. Giants like Apple and WhatsApp have taken some really unprecedented steps. They're pledging robust new defense strategies, and critically, they've started actively informing users who they suspect have been targeted by these state-level actors.
So they're putting the spyware vendors on blast.
Exactly. It puts the spotlight squarely on these commercial vendors who are profiting from the erosion of civil liberties around the world.
Staying on this theme of integrity, let's look at the actual infrastructure that supports this entire digital world. Data centers. There's an innovation here aimed at stopping leaks before they even happen.
Yes, a company called Mainflow is working on technology designed to identify and stop data center leaks before they turn into these costly, damaging breaches.
And the stakes here are massive.
Absolutely huge. The average data breach costs a company about $5.5 million. And here's the key takeaway from the data. 39% of those breaches don't come from some sophisticated state-sponsored hack. They come from simple internal negligence.
Like what?
Unpatched servers, misconfigured firewalls, simple human error. So this kind of preemptive internal monitoring is becoming an absolute necessity to secure the digital backbone of our world.
And this security issue is directly tied to the enormous energy crisis facing data centers.
The energy demand is just staggering. Data centers are projected to need 22% more power by the end of 2025 alone. That's mainly driven by the AI boom and just our increased use of cloud computing for everything.
And that's overwhelming our power grids.
It is. It's overwhelming traditional power grids, and it's necessitating this urgent investment in what are called smart grid solutions. We have to integrate advanced software and AI into how our utilities operate, just to efficiently manage the energy supply and keep the grid stable. Otherwise, this digital acceleration is going to lead to major real-world infrastructure failures.
Okay, so from the macro infrastructure down to the personal device on your wrist, the wearable war is really heating up, specifically between Google's new Pixel Watch 4 and Apple's SE3.
Google is clearly aiming at the high-end, feature-rich market here. The Pixel Watch 4 has some significant hardware improvements. It's got a 15% smaller bezel around the screen, dual-frequency GPS for much better location accuracy.
And a big new safety feature.
A huge one. Emergency satellite communications. This makes it one of the first smartwatches that can send out a distress call for help, even if you have no cell service at all. And of course, it's deeply integrated with advanced health monitoring, ECG, irregular heart rhythm detection, and it's all powered by Google's Gemini AI.
That's a powerhouse of a watch, but it comes with a powerhouse price tag, what, $350 to $450?
Yeah.
What are the early reviews saying about the downsides?
The reviews have been pretty positive on the feature set, but there are some mixed reports, some minor connectivity hiccups, and some lingering questions about the device's long-term durability, especially the screen.
And Apple, meanwhile, is taking the complete opposite approach with the Apple Watch SE3.
Totally opposite strategy. The SE3 is their entry point. It's the budget option.
So it's all about accessibility.
Exactly. It's Apple's strategy to get their tech on more wrists. It's positioned as the budget-friendly choice, and it focuses on the core health functions and that seamless integration into the Apple ecosystem. It runs on the latest watchOS, but you need an iPhone 11 or newer to use it. Apple is prioritizing getting essential health tech into the hands of a broader audience that might not want to pay for the premium flagship model.
It's a key distinction. Google is going for maximum features. Apple is going for maximum market penetration.
That's it in a nutshell.
Before we wrap personal tech, a small but highly requested quality of life update from Google about our digital identities.
Yes, finally. The ability to change your primary at gmail.com address. For years, if you wanted a new address, you had to start a whole new account and lose everything. Now, users can pick a new email name and keep the old one as an alias.
A huge convenience for anyone who regrets that email address they made when they were 14.
Or just needs a more professional identity.
Yeah.
The feature is rolling out regionally, and it's starting in markets like India first.
We have to end this tech segment by returning to our core theme of risk and resilience, especially as it concerns the next generation. We have some critical new research linking early smartphone use to a mental health crisis.
This has become a full-blown public health alarm. The research is now confirming a strong correlation between children getting their own smartphones before the age of 12 and a measurably higher incidence of mental health challenges, anxiety, depression during their teenage years.
And the reason is rooted in developmental science.
Exactly. Early exposure to this pervasive digital technology can really disrupt these crucial developmental windows for social and emotional learning, for developing coping mechanisms. It increases their vulnerability to peer pressure, constant social comparison, and just sheer information overload.
So what are the experts calling for now?
They're advocating very strongly for establishing clear, structured age limits for smartphone ownership. This moves the conversation beyond just, optional parental controls and into the realm of necessary preventative public health measures. The argument is that society needs to protect children from technology that is simply outpacing their mental and emotional capacity to manage it safely.
Let's turn our attention now to the global stage, where the struggle for control remains, as always, intense and often mired in conflict. We'll start with that really complex triangle between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia, specifically surrounding President Donald Trump's high-stakes meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Florida.
The whole setting and context for this was highly charged. The meeting happened at Mar-a-Lago, and it came right on the heels of reports that President Trump had a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin shortly before he met with Zelensky.
And the public statements were all very positive.
Publicly, the statements were upbeat, suggesting progress. But reporters who were close to the matter, like those at the BBC, they noted that thorny questions remain unresolved. It points to a real disconnect between the public optimism and the private reality.
We also got a peek into the pure political theater, the interaction itself.
The theater was palpable. Reports highlighted these really awkward dynamics. You had President Trump at one point scolding a reporter for what he called a dumb question, and then Zelensky having to, as one report put it, slyly deflect Trump's casual boasting about his lavish Mar-a-Lago estate.
It's just hard to reconcile that kind of performance art with the seriousness of trying to end a brutal war.
It is, and the core dilemma remains the peace process. President Trump expressed a reluctance to actually visit Ukraine, but he said he would do it if he felt it was absolutely necessary to finalize a peace deal. He'd prefer to save lives without the travel, if possible.
And that dynamic is happening against the backdrop of a very significant shift in tone from the highest levels of Ukrainian security.
This is a major development, a really stark pivot from Kirill Budanov, who's the chief of Ukrainian military intelligence. He has publicly backed away from some of their previous hardline demands. He's now calling for an urgent ceasefire.
And he made a pretty dramatic acknowledgement.
He did. He acknowledged that given the current military stalemate, Ukraine cannot dictate the terms to Russia. And he said they must accept that Moscow's interests will have to take precedence, just as any sovereign nations would in a negotiated settlement. That signals a very difficult, maybe even painful, political and military reckoning happening in Kyiv about what a realistic outcome to this conflict actually looks like.
And that potential shift is all tied up with Ukraine's internal politics, specifically the looming threat to President Zelensky's power.
There is widespread speculation about this. The rumor is that retired General Valery Zaluzhny, who's currently the ambassador to the UK, is expected to return to Kyiv with the intention of challenging Zelensky for the presidency.
And he's popular.
Very popular. Polls suggest he could potentially defeat the incumbent. And this creates this intense domestic tension because Zelensky has resisted holding elections under the current martial law conditions. That effectively prevents any formal political challenges and maintains the existing power structure during the war.
Meanwhile, Russia is proactively building up its legal defenses against the international community.
Yes. President Putin recently signed a new law that grants Russia the authority to just ignore foreign court rulings related to Ukraine. This move is a strategic effort to create a kind of legal shield. It insulates Russian state entities and individuals from international judgments, from sanctions, from asset seizures that might stem from the conflict. It just further complicates any future international legal or diplomatic action.
Let's move east now. The Asia-Pacific flashpoint over the Taiwan Strait is intensifying, and rapidly. China has been conducting massive live-fire military drills.
These were huge-scale drills. They were dubbed Joint Sword 2025A, and they were conducted in the waters and the airspace all around Taiwan. It was a highly aggressive and very demonstrative show of force.
And they were simulating a full-scale attack.
They were simulating a full military blockade of Taiwan's key ports and also practicing precision strikes against potential targets on the island. Beijing was very explicit about this. They framed the action as a serious warning against any perceived Taiwanese separatist movements and a direct message to external foreign influences.
Meaning the U.S. and Japan.
Specifically the U.S. and Japan. A message to cease interference.
Beyond the military posturing, what was the immediate tangible impact of these drills?
Immediate and widespread disruption. The temporary closure of airspace and sea lanes affected roughly 100,000 air passengers. It caused significant delays and economic disruption right across the region. And it drew international condemnation from Western allies. But notably, nations like Cuba issued statements backing China's sovereignty claims and condemning what they called the militarization of Taiwan.
And there's still ongoing lower-level conflict elsewhere in Asia, specifically between Thailand and Cambodia.
Yes, a newly signed ceasefire that was intended to stabilize their shared border immediately faced accusations of being violated by Thailand. The Thai military alleged that Cambodia has deployed over 250 drones since the truce was supposed to take effect.
which Thailand sees as a major provocation.
A significant provocation that they say fundamentally undermines the spirit and the intent of the agreement, which was designed to end weeks of violent clashes.
Before we move on to the Middle East, we have to address some serious allegations regarding U.S. forces in South Korea.
Human rights groups have raised some very serious allegations concerning human trafficking and exploitation involving U.S. military personnel stationed in South Korea. They are demanding immediate, thorough investigations and accountability.
And this is a critical issue that goes beyond just the human rights violations.
It does. It also strains diplomatic relations and raises fundamental questions about the oversight and the conduct of U.S. military forces when they're operating on foreign soil.
Turning to the Middle East, former President Trump is also engaged in high-level diplomacy there, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes, that planned meeting was scheduled to address the stalled Gaza ceasefire, the immediate crisis in Iran, and the growing escalations in Lebanon. Trump is aiming to press for progress, but Netanyahu is facing a really complicated and intense domestic political reality.
What's his primary challenge?
His challenge is to find a diplomatic path toward peace, which has to include the step of making sure Hamas is fully disarmed, but to do it without, as the reports say, antagonizing his base back home. That base often opposes concessions and holds significant political power over his coalition government.
And while those diplomatic talks sputter along, the humanitarian situation on the ground in Gaza has just hit a new, horrific low because of the weather.
The suffering there has been just profoundly compounded by a harsh winter weekend. A severe storm, which was tragically described by aid workers as a bomb cyclone, has caused even more fatalities.
The crisis is most acute in the makeshift camps.
It is. The flooding is rampant. And the most dire reports coming from the UN and local officials say that the floodwater is now mixing with raw sewage, and that mixture is flowing into family shelters. It's creating a catastrophic health risk on top of the mud, the cold, and the total lack of sanitation. It's a compounding tragedy where the weather itself becomes another deadly weapon.
Elsewhere in the region, Israel made a highly controversial diplomatic move by recognizing Somaliland.
Yes, Israel's recognition of Somaliland, which is a self-declared but internationally unrecognized state in the Horn of Africa, has been widely condemned. African and Middle Eastern nations, including neighboring Somalia, they view it as a profound violation of Somalia's territorial integrity.
Critics are suggesting this move is purely strategic on Israel's part.
The argument is that Israel is seeking a strategic foothold in a critical area, particularly access to the port of Berbera on the Gulf of Aden. This geopolitical maneuvering even drew a stern warning directed at Israel from the Houthis in Yemen. It just highlights the complex regional security implications of these new alliances in such a vital maritime choke point.
And finally, in Africa, a harrowing update from Sudan following the capture of the city of El Fasher.
El Fasher was captured by the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, and the first UN visit to the area since the capture paints a just devastating picture.
What they find?
The UN aid coordinator, Denise Brown, reported finding traumatized civilians facing severe deprivations, a massive lack of essential services like clean water and sanitation. This visit confirms all the widespread reports of mass atrocities, and it underscores the ongoing acute humanitarian catastrophe in Sudan and the urgent need for international intervention.
Let's shift now to domestic policy and that constant tension between security and human rights. The UK is embroiled in a really heated debate over the citizenship of an Egyptian dissident.
This is about Allah Abdel Fattah, who's a prominent dual British-Egyptian national and dissident. Following his recent release after years of imprisonment in Egypt, conservative political leaders in the UK have been pressuring the government to strip him of his British citizenship.
And this stems from some controversial social media posts he made in the past.
Yes, some of which were described as violent and anti-Semitic.
This debate is really a microcosm of that tension between free speech and national security.
It is the ultimate legal tightrope. Abdel Fattah has apologized for the posts. He described them as ill-considered. But the key conflict is this. Should a democratic nation strip citizenship from a dual national dissident who has faced years of state oppression abroad, even if they made controversial statements?
Critics argue it undermines democratic values.
They do. They argue it undermines the principle of protecting dissidents. But those pushing to revoke his citizenship maintain that national security and protecting the public have to be the priority, especially when it comes to inflammatory content. It's a precedent-setting decision for the UK government.
And across the Atlantic, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, is introducing new, sweeping immigration scrutiny measures.
The new DHS rules mandate biometric screening for all lawful permanent residents or green card holders at every single entry and exit point. We're talking fingerprints, photos, digital verification.
And this removes previous exemptions.
It removes exemptions for young children and the elderly. And while it's being framed as a modernization effort, it significantly intensifies the scrutiny, particularly for travelers from 19 specific countries, including Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela.
So what are the practical implications of this? What are the concerns being raised?
The major concern is the psychological impact and just the increased burden it places on people who are legal residents. It's a subtle but profound shift. The focus has traditionally been on undocumented migrants, and now it's moving to this pervasive oversight of people legally living in the U.S.
Immigration lawyers are already advising their clients.
They're advising LPRs to anticipate heightened questioning, possible processing delays. It's just amplifying anxiety about what should be routine international travel.
Finally, in Latin America, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro continues to push this very strong narrative of national resilience against external pressure.
He's been using some very strong rhetorical language recently. He exalted the country's military forces as emancipators and liberators, and he praised the civic military alliance for its victory against what he perceives as threats from the United States.
And he even made a dramatic biblical comparison.
He did. He likened his domestic opponents to the biblical King Herod. It's all about emphasizing national sovereignty against perceived imperialism. And this narrative is strongly supported by regional allies like Dominica, which publicly criticized the U.S. pressure on Venezuela.
But that narrative of resilience is contrasted by some very real economic unrest happening in the region.
Absolutely. In Bolivia, workers have launched an indefinite strike and mobilization against President Rodrigo Paz's recent fuel price hike, which has been widely dubbed the gasolinazo. It's raising widespread concern over the immediate cost of living.
And elsewhere.
In Honduras, a coalition of progressive groups has called for large protests to demand transparency following allegations of electoral fraud. And just a quick note from Kosovo, Prime Minister Albin Kurti secured a significant election victory with his left-wing party, consolidating support for his platform of nationalism and anti-corruption.
Okay, let's shift gears and focus on the world of money, finance, and corporate power. This segment, maybe more than any other, really shows the incredible speed of progress colliding with systemic risk. Let's start with a historic milestone, the $5 trillion club.
Nvidia just did something no one has ever done before. It became the first company in history to reach a $5 trillion market valuation. That is a truly staggering figure. It reflects the global market's absolute reliance on and, frankly, frenzied investment in artificial intelligence infrastructure.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How did Nvidia, a company we historically knew for making gaming graphics cards, how did they pull ahead of the traditional giants like Apple and Microsoft in this race? What was the specific driver?
It's all about GPU dominance, graphics processing units. The LLMs we were talking about earlier, the foundation of all this generative AI, they require this immense parallel processing power, and GTUs provide that far more efficiently than standard CPUs.
So Nvidia basically has a monopoly on the shovels in this AI gold rush.
That's a perfect way to put it. They have an effective monopoly on the high-end hardware that is essential for building modern AI infrastructure. The massive accelerated enterprise AI adoption we discussed in segment 2, that translates directly into multi-billion-dollar orders for NVIDIA's specialized chips. It just catapulted their valuation beyond what anyone, even a year ago, thought was possible.
So the conversation immediately pivots. Who's next? Apple and Microsoft are obviously in the running.
Analysts are watching that race very closely. Apple has tremendous cash flow and brand loyalty, but its growth isn't accelerating at that same AI pace. Microsoft, on the other hand,
With their deep OpenAI integration.
Exactly. Their deep integration of OpenAI tech and their huge position in enterprise cloud computing with Azure, they're seen as the primary challenger to NVIDIA's crown. This level of valuation, it just highlights the competitive intensity and the sheer scale of investment that's focused on capitalizing on this AI revolution.
But despite that one colossal win for Nvidia, we've seen a lot of overall market volatility, a recent retreat in the final stretch of the year.
We are seeing classic end-of-year profit-taking. S&P 500 futures have declined as investors are pulling money out, especially from those high-flying tech stocks like Nvidia and Tesla, just to lock in their annual gains.
And this isn't just in tech.
No, it's hitting commodities too. Silver prices retreated sharply. They dropped 10% from a recent peak of $80, and gold also softened. Interestingly, Bitcoin has shown a bit of a counter-trend rise amidst this general correction. It often acts as a hedge against volatility in traditional finance.
Now, let's turn to a structural financial risk that I think hits much closer to home for the average person listening: the soaring U.S. national debt and the volatility of interest rates.
This is a critical warning, and it was delivered by a former Treasury official, Jeng Ngarbunent. The concern isn't just the overall size of the U.S. debt, which is colossal. It's a crucial shift in the demographics of who is buying it.
So, historically, a lot of U.S. debt was bought by foreign countries, central banks.
Right. And now there is an increased reliance on domestic buyers.
Okay, so why does the identity of the buyer matter to my mortgage rate?
Because when the U.S. government has to rely more heavily on domestic buyers, we're talking U.S. banks, pension funds, individual investors, to absorb this ever-increasing debt load, it puts massive internal pressure on the capital markets. This increased domestic demand for bonds directly contributes to rising and, crucially, more volatile interest rates across the entire economy.
So for you, the listener.
For you, the listener, this volatility is the systemic pressure that is driving up the cost of your consumer loans. Your new mortgage rate is higher and less predictable. Your student loan repayment rates are subject to these same volatile swings. It's a systemic economic pressure point that stems directly from this shifting financial architecture.
On a completely different note, we had celebrity investor Kevin O'Leary offering a very blunt critique of personal spending habits, particularly targeting convenience culture.
O'Leary, who's famous from the TV show Shark Tank, he drew a lot of attention for criticizing what he called broke people. He said they frequently complain about not being able to invest, while at the same time, they're engaging in a high-cost convenient spending, like dropping $15 on a takeout lunch salad instead of just cooking at home. He called it financial laziness.
It's a harsh take, for sure. But is there a kernel of truth in his analysis of convenience spending?
Well, the point he makes is that these small, habitual convenience costs, they compound exponentially. O'Leary argues that if you sacrifice that convenience and you save that $15 a day and you invest it consistently, it could translate into potentially $500,000 in future wealth over a working lifetime.
Of course, critics say this ignores things like wage stagnation and time poverty.
It does, but O'Leary's message really highlights that cultural tension between the immediate gratification you get from convenience and the discipline that's required for long-term financial health.
Moving to corporate strategy, we're watching a major battle unfold in the retail space, as Target makes a really calculated move to challenge Walmart's dominance.
Target is executing what industry analysts are calling a risky bet. Instead of trying to beat Walmart just on low-price volume, a battle they are very unlikely to win, Target is focusing aggressively on differentiation.
So quality over quantity.
Quality merchandise, curated and unique shopping experiences, and a big push on sustainability efforts. They're trying to capture market share by appealing to a more conscious consumer, someone who prioritizes value and the experience of shopping over just the rock-bottom cost.
That feels like a very high-stakes gamble in the current economic climate.
It is. But if it's successful, this strategy could really reconfigure the retail landscape. It could prove that a superior experience and curated quality can peel away consumers from Walmart's established low-price dominance. It's a necessary risk to avoid getting dragged into an unwinnable price war.
Conversely, the UK retail sector is signaling some really severe economic stress.
The UK high street is facing a really troubling trend. We're seeing major closures from established high-traffic retailers, Poundland, Iceland, Marks & Spencer, Co-op.
And this is driven by a perfect storm of factors.
It is. Mounting economic pressures, rampant inflation eroding their profit margins, and that fundamental shift in consumer behavior towards online shopping. This wave of closures is a huge concern for local economies, often leaving these big voids in town centers that really relied on those stores as anchors.
We also have evidence that socio-political instability is now measurably impacting the global flow of skilled human capital.
The Israeli tech sector, which is a global innovation hub, is reporting a notable increase in requests for relocation abroad among its skilled professionals who work for multinational companies. And this is being directly attributed to the socio-political instability and uncertainty within the country.
So this is a potential brain drain.
It's a potential brain drain of high-value human capital, and it raises serious concerns about Israel's long-term talent retention and its competitive position in the global tech arena.
Internal corporate drama is also brewing over at Lululemon.
Yes, Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, is initiating a high-profile proxy fight. He's aiming to overhaul the company's board of directors.
And a proxy fight is basically when a shareholder tries to persuade other shareholders to vote their way.
Exactly. Usually to change the composition of the board, it signals a really significant internal struggle over corporate governance and future strategy. It's a great example of how a founder's influence can challenge the direction of a publicly traded company, even years after they've officially left.
And unfortunately, the market pressures are claiming more victims in the craft beer industry.
The much-discussed craft beer apocalypse is continuing. We saw the closure of another popular, well-established craft brewery, which just illustrates this persistent struggle. The downturn is primarily attributed to market saturation, just too many small players, combined with rapidly rising operational costs for ingredients, packaging, and distribution.
So analysts are predicting more closures.
They are. They predict that without some significant strategic innovation, more independent breweries are going to face bankruptcy in the coming year.
Shifting to global manufacturing, China's Leapmotor is laying out some very aggressive electric vehicle ambitions.
Leapmotor, a key Chinese EV manufacturer, is targeting massive production growth. They're aiming for annual sales of more than 4 million vehicles within a decade, with an intermediate goal of 1 million by 2026.
And they're not planning on doing this alone.
No, they plan to achieve this through a crucial strategic partnership with Stellantis, the global automotive leader. That partnership is essential for expanding Leapmotor's reach far beyond the protected Chinese market and into highly competitive international markets.
Finally, let's return to Iran, where economic mismanagement is boiling over into public dissent.
The Iranian national currency, the rial, just plummeted to a record low of 1.42 million to the US dollar. This economic devastation has sparked widespread protests, and it's led to shopkeepers across major cities closing their stores in solidarity.
And they're protesting inflation.
They're protesting severe inflation and what they are calling catastrophic economic mismanagement by the government. This unrest really underscores the growing political tension that's rooted in economic hardship, and it's all compounded by sanctions and internal policy failures.
Before we close out this segment, let's look at a quick historical case study in corporate responsibility, or maybe the lack of it, as the airline Lufthansa celebrates a major anniversary.
Lufthansa is marking its 100th anniversary, and that has brought renewed scrutiny onto its very controversial origins. The original company, Deutsche Lufthansa, played a deeply questionable role during the Holocaust.
Including the alleged use of forced labor.
Right. And investigative work shows this broader pattern in post-World War II German corporate culture, a kind of willful amnesia.
Explain that concept. What is willful amnesia?
After the war, many of the business leaders who were complicit in the Nazi regime were basically given a calculated pass. They were allowed to keep their assets and their leadership positions with the goal of rapidly rebuilding the German economy.
So expediency over accountability.
Exactly. And that expediency led to this widespread reluctance by many corporations, including Lufthansa, to fully confront their Nazi-era past. And you can argue that this lack of a full reckoning still persists in the corporate culture of several of Germany's legacy companies today. It just highlights the long-term impact of prioritizing economic rebuilding over moral accountability.
Let's turn the page now to history, health, and the deeply human dramas of the week. We'll start with some remarkable archaeological discoveries that are deepening our understanding of ancient civilizations.
The discovery of a 2,500-year-old Etruscan core statue in Italy is particularly significant. The Etruscans were this dominant civilization in central Italy before the rise of Rome. And this statue, it features that classic archaic smile, and it just epitomizes the profound cultural exchange they had with their Greek neighbors.
So this isn't just a statue, it's really a testament to cultural borrowing and adaptation. What specific Greek customs did the Etruscans adopt that this artifact reflects?
They adopted core social and cultural customs. The statue's context and funerary practices highlights the Etruscan adoption of Greek elements like the klein, which is a reclining couch, and the symposium, that elite social gathering. The art shows they didn't just copy Greek styles, they adapted them. They integrated their own specific beliefs and narratives, especially around the transition to death and the afterlife. It's a blend of the Greek aesthetic with Etruscan spiritual concepts.
And speaking of journeys to the afterlife, we have another fascinating funerary discovery.
That would be the 3,500-year-old covered Lacotian wagon. This artifact was found in remarkable condition, and it was used in funerary customs to transport a deceased chief. Its preservation gives us crucial insight not just into the rituals of death, but also the social structures and the high level of craftsmanship that was achieved by that civilization. It symbolized the chief's important final journey.
It's interesting how the new technology we've been discussing, like LIDAR, is now crucial for understanding ancient infrastructure.
Oh, absolutely. The ongoing exploration of an ancient city wall is a perfect example of this. Researchers are using advanced techniques like LIDAR, which is light detection, and ranging and other advanced dating methods to create these incredibly precise chronological maps of the structure.
So it's not just about when the wall was built.
No, it allows them to understand the sequential phases of construction, and that in turn reflects the changing socio-political dynamics, the military threats, the economic priorities of the ancient city's rulers over time.
Okay, let's transition to public health, where we have a really surprising finding about a common vaccine and cognitive health.
This is a very promising breakthrough. New research is suggesting that the shingles vaccine may offer significant protective benefits for older adults beyond just preventing shingles itself. Specifically, the vaccine may actually slow the progression of dementia or even potentially prevent its onset.
That is a massive potential benefit. What's the mechanism they're exploring here?
Well, more study is needed, but the theory revolves around the vaccine's ability to boost the immune system and potentially reduce chronic neuroinflammation. And that's a factor that's often associated with the onset and progression of Alzheimer's and other dementias. This really highlights the vaccine's broader protective potential, and it could lead to new public health strategies where vaccination is used to enhance neurological longevity.
We also have a crucial discussion this week that emphasizes the often overlooked mental health of new fathers.
Yes, mental health advocates Professor Green and Ryan Libby engaged in this really candid, open discussion about the intense, often unspoken pressures of parenthood. They underscored the critical importance of mental well-being for new fathers. They were advocating for open communication, prioritizing self-care, and breaking the stigma around the emotional struggles that so often accompany new parenting.
Because the societal focus is so often just on mothers.
It is, and this discussion brings some vital attention to the need for fathers to maintain their own resilience.
Moving to infrastructure and safety, Hong Kong is facing a systemic challenge in the wake of the Taipu fire tragedy.
That tragic fire has starkly highlighted Hong Kong's systemic challenge of aging infrastructure. About 18% of the city's buildings are now over 50 years old. And while the immediate safety discussions sometimes focus on localized issues like road signage, the core problem requires a much more comprehensive government response.
What are the experts arguing for?
They're arguing for clearer, streamlined governance that prioritizes mandatory comprehensive building maintenance and addresses the inherent risks that come with these high-rise structures that are densely inhabited by an aging population.
This week was also tragically punctuated by a cluster of accidents and fatalities, which just underscores the universal need for safety vigilance.
It was a heartbreaking few days globally. We saw the tragic loss of a mother and her 2 young children in a Boxing Day house fire in Kent in the UK. In New Jersey, a deadly mid-air helicopter collision resulted in the fatality of one of the pilots.
And a devastating train derailment in Mexico.
In Oaxaca, Mexico, yes. It killed 13 people and injured nearly 100. It raises serious questions about infrastructure safety standards there. And the British heavyweight boxer Anthony Joshua was involved in a fatal car crash in Nigeria that killed 2 other people, though he sustained only minor injuries.
And the dangers of cold water, even during festive periods, were tragically highlighted.
Yes. A 2-year-old girl died after falling into a pond on Christmas Day. And compounding that sorrow, we had the news that the singer Kate Bush's longtime friend, Matthew Upham, is one of 2 men missing after a traditional Christmas Day swim in Devon. Search operations are ongoing, and it's just a somber reminder of the unpredictable risks of cold water activities.
Finally, let's turn to crime and social accountability, starting with a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of distracted driving, especially when it's for social media engagement.
This involves a TikTok influencer, Tanisha McCarty-Roten, known online as Tea Time. She was charged with felony reckless driving after she struck and killed a pedestrian in Illinois while she was live streaming her drive.
And this case tragically confirms the statistics.
It does. The U.S. Department of Transportation reports that distracted driving, like using a phone, creates a crash risk that is 23 times higher than driving while not distracted. This incident has reignited these intense discussions about the responsibility of content creators to prioritize public safety over online engagement and validation.
We also have details on a massive case of social services fraud that was exposed in Minnesota.
A deep journalistic investigation uncovered alleged social services fraud involving over $110 million in state funds. And it's directly connected to that much larger $250 million Feeding Our Future federal aid scheme that was launched during the pandemic.
The severity of this economic crime is underscored by what's happening to the suspects.
Yes, U.S. authorities are referring suspects for deportation, and intelligence reports are suggesting that some of the laundered funds may have been funneled overseas and may have potentially benefited extremist groups, specifically al-Shabaab.
And linking back to domestic political extremism, the Justice Department is making a connection to the January 6th pipe bomb suspect.
The Justice Department confirmed that the suspect linked to the January 6th pipe bomb incidents was believed to have been heavily influenced by election conspiracy theories. This adds critical weight to the ongoing discourse about how widespread misinformation and politically motivated false narratives can transition from the digital world into tangible, real-world violence.
And a quick contrasting approach from Pakistan.
Yes, authorities there detained a radicalized teenage girl who was on a suspected suicide bombing plot, but they're treating her as a victim of online extremism, not as a criminal suspect. They're seeking to rehabilitate rather than solely punish her.
All right, time for a moment of drama, resilience, and pure competition. Let's quickly wrap up the world of sports, starting on the Osh. The PDC World Darts Championship is setting up a thrilling match.
The drama is definitely building. Rob Cross delivered a masterful performance to eliminate Damon Hedda, and that advances him to a highly anticipated showdown against the reigning champion, Luke Littler. That final stage promises top-tier skill and massive crowds.
We also had a high-profile tennis exhibition in Dubai, the Battle of the Sexes, where Nick Kyrgios defeated Aryna Sabalenka.
Kyrgios won 6-3, 6-3, but the match's competitive integrity was really undercut by the modified rules. Sabalenka was limited to a single serve, and she played on a smaller court, adjustments that were designed to level the playing field.
And the critics noted the lack of intensity.
They did. While Sabalenka hit an amazing winner that went viral, the competitive intensity was muted. It led to questions about whether the exhibition was really effective in seriously addressing gender dynamics in sports, or if it was just high-profile entertainment.
Over in rugby union, the Exeter Chiefs are celebrating a dominant performance.
The Exeter Chiefs secured a dominant 24-10 victory over the Leicester Tigers. Their powerful forward pack just set the tone early in the game and overwhelmed Leicester's defense. This performance propelled the Chiefs back up to second place in the Premiership standings, solidifying their position as a major title contender.
On the football pitch, we're celebrating emerging stars and some strategic transfers.
Tottenham Hotspur is celebrating 19-year-old Archie Gray, who scored his first senior goal for the club, leading Spurs to a key victory over Crystal Palace, a significant milestone for the young player. And in transfer news, Manchester United made a key acquisition, signing German international Leah Schuler from Bayern Munich until 2029. It shows their commitment to strengthening their women's Super League squad.
And we had an interesting exchange regarding the pressure on coaches from Manchester United manager Ruben Amorim.
Amorim publicly clarified that the tactical adjustments he made recently were based purely on internal team performance analysis and timing, not on external media pressure. He stressed the importance of maintaining integrity in strategic decision-making, which is crucial for any manager navigating the intense, often hysterical scrutiny that comes with leading a major global club.
And a quick nod to the African Cup of Nations for a moment of powerful human resilience.
Sudan achieved its first victory at AFCON since 2012. This remarkable feat, accomplished despite the ongoing conflict and humanitarian catastrophe at home, it sends this powerful, unifying message of hope and national resilience to a struggling nation. It just demonstrates the unique power of sport to transcend political turmoil.
And finally, two superstars, one in basketball, one in football, flexing their dominance and their ambition.
In the NBA, Kawhi Leonard had an explosive night, putting up a career-high 55 points, tying the Clippers' franchise record and extending their winning streak. In the NFL, the New England Patriots completed a dominant season on the road, securing a perfect 8-0 road record after soundly defeating the New York Jets 42-10. And fans are keenly anticipating the Bills versus Eagles Week 17 matchup, which has massive playoff implications.
And Cristiano Ronaldo continues to set just audacious goals for his legendary career.
He declared that he will continue playing until he hits the monumental milestone of 1,000 career goals. That kind of ambitious, sustained focus, so late in a career that has already defined a generation, it just reinforces his unparalleled commitment to excellence and his legacy in the sport.
We've spent the last hour navigating a world that is just defined by its dizzying contradictions. We saw the unparalleled acceleration of human capability, a $5 trillion company, life support being tested for a mission to the moon, and that was set against the persistent static tragedy of human conflict and the slow, grinding reality of climate change.
And we saw the price of that progress. The silent, creeping risks that are embedded in our digital infrastructure, the bias in the LLMs, the zero-click spyware, they're all evolving much faster than our collective ability to govern them ethically or securely. We are in a race between innovation and accountability.
That brings us back to that critical theme of control and capital. We noted the strong correlation between early smartphone use and adolescent mental health issues, combined with the alarming bias in the AI systems that are becoming the gatekeepers of knowledge and opportunity. This forces us to look at the future generation.
In a world where AI and smartphones are increasingly governing our access to knowledge and connection, are we equipping the next generation with the mental resilience they need to govern these technologies? Or are we, through early exposure in these flawed bias systems, actually making them fundamentally more vulnerable to the complex digital architecture we are so rapidly creating?
And that question gets even sharper when you view it through the lens of geopolitics and economics. We saw highly skilled Israeli tech professionals seeking stable environments abroad, the free flow of human capital, while at the same time, we saw lawful permanent residents in the U.S. being placed under intense, anxiety-inducing biometric screening at every single port of entry.
So here is the provocative thought we want to leave you with. As global instability rises, does the modern world fundamentally prioritize capital and skilled talent, allowing money and high-value human resources to flow freely across borders to find stability, while simultaneously restricting the basic movement, freedom, and dignity of ordinary people and legal residents through ever-increasing scrutiny and technological oversight? Is our freedom of movement becoming contingent on our economic value?
That is certainly something to ponder until our next deep dive.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.